to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. This is the place where you get both a coach's and sports dietitian perspective on topics important to endurance sports, including nutrition, training, and how these impact and fit into your daily life both on and off the race course. Your host, Coach Justin, certified run and triathlon coach and owner of Tabula Rasa Racing, along with Coach Katie, a registered dietitian with a specialty in sports nutrition and owner of Fuel to Run. Here at the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast is where your journey begins. Welcome, everyone. This is a new series that we're going to be bringing you on our off weeks. So typically what we've been doing is every other week we bring you a main topic podcast, but this series of podcast episodes are going to be a little bit more on the casual side. Coach Katie and I will just have conversation and just a discussion on kind of things like what we're dealing with, any kind of struggles that we have, or any kind of special interests that we want to bring, a little shorter topics, just to bring out some more content with you guys. So this is episode 1 of the Coach's Corner, and today we're going to be talking about Coach Katie's post-marathon struggles. She said that I can use the word struggle, and so she said it's been a bit challenging. So I'm going to limit this introduction, and we're just going to dive right in to keep this short and to the point. So Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and let's hear about what's been going on.
Yeah, so I know we had our post-race discussion, and that was pretty soon after my marathon. And since then, I've just had some struggles. I think several things have kind of happened, but it's just been really hard for me to kind of get back into training for several reasons. And I'm just wanted to bring this up because I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with when they have like a really big race that they're training for, like an A race, and then they complete it, especially if maybe they did get their goal for the race or they put so much work into it, and then they kind of have this like post-race, not always struggle, but there's just sometimes this like trying to find the motivation to sign up for another race, trying to figure out what you're going to do. Maybe you run into some issues after the race, just kind of recovering and so forth. So that's what I want to talk about today, and I'm going to sort of go through my story, kind of what's going on with me. And then I definitely want Coach Justin's input too, because he might, I think, have some ideas for me. But so basically I finished the race and I actually felt pretty good. About a week later, I was just doing some really short, like 1 mile. I did like a 1 mile run on the beach and nothing really pushing it because I knew I had time to recover, but just to kind of move my body. And then about 10 days after, when we were traveling home, I started to get like a bit achy. I just kind of feeling off, but not like a flu or anything. I just felt really off that day while we were traveling. And then we got home and I had like cold chills and just these weird symptoms. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just kind of coming down with something. Try to do some easy running because I'm like, okay, it's been 10 days. I probably should start getting back into training. And it just wasn't going well. Like my body was just kind of like, yeah, this isn't, I think I was maybe fighting something. I start to feel a little bit better that weekend, maybe Friday, Saturday. And then it hits me again, like kind of a low grade fever. And then I had this bizarre symptoms of aches and like extreme joint pain. So much so that like I was trying to go running and it just was like, I'm like jogging along, I'm tired. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to push it. This is obviously my body telling me there's something wrong, like there's something going on. And I even went to the urgent care, kind of like, what's going on? And it tested me for everything and I had nothing. That I felt kind of silly, like, oh, I probably should have gone. And 2 days later, sure enough, I do feel better. But this is now almost, over 2 weeks after my marathon. So now I've kind of lost some training momentum there, because typically when I run a marathon, I don't get right back into training, but I like to start running again about a week later and just ease into it. That isn't always the case. When I did Tucson 6 weeks after my New York City marathon, I didn't really do that because I had to kind of get back into training. But this time I'm like, I'm just going to ease back into it. Typically I feel pretty good, but this was just a really bizarre, like, wow, my body is almost really telling me I need to take time off. But I think the struggle happened when I start to get back into training. And then I had a periodontal surgery, which they required me to take about a week off. So I start to build some momentum, and then I have to take a week off. So there now, this week off, and now I'm at 5 weeks post marathon, and I had a 5K that I signed up for like way, way, way before, like months ago. Just, and I had these grand ideas like, I'm going to come back after my marathon and I'm going to train for this 5K and I'm going to get like a really great time in this 5K. And I had to like let all of that go. Like, this isn't even going to be possible. I'm just going to be seeing what I can do in this 5K. And I did it. And it just like, even the days, like the first day I ran after my or my 6 days off roughly from the periodontal surgery, I just did a really light, easy run, and that felt hard. And I'm like, oh, so I've got this 5K in like a day or two. Like, this is gonna be rough. And it was rough. Like, I was surprised. I did okay, but it felt awful. And it just, and for the first time I've never seen this before. And I know I can't really take Garmin too seriously, but it was like unproductive. Like, my Garmin watch is like unproductive. It's like I've like seen that like the day of my race and I'm like, oh, it's like the first time I've ever seen it say that, and it gave me like -5 points. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if anyone has a Garmin, but and sometimes that happens and I'm like, I'm just gonna not take it seriously. But I just try to like let it go because I kind of know like, okay, I can't like let this get to me. But it's frustrating. Like, I'm like never seen that. And then, I'm just now, so now I do that race and it's like clear I've lost a lot of, I mean, not a lot, but a pretty significant amount of fitness. So you go from like being in your top shape, you're just in this great shape for this race. And then to lose that fitness because you just can't have that consistency in training is so frustrating. And so now I'm just feeling like I'm not lacking motivation, but it's just that momentum. Like before the marathon, I ran, I think every day. There was a couple times I only ran 1 mile, but I think I ran pretty much every day since like January 1st, at least 1 mile. So I had momentum, like I was doing it consistently. And then to kind of have this either forced or sort of like the recovery you're supposed to take, and then kind of this like forced recovery that I had, it's really hard now to kind of get back into that momentum of training and finding the time and the heat and all of those things. Is just, I'm really struggling with that. And I think it's a common thing, but it's something I think I have to kind of take a step back too, because I had ran like 3 marathons in essentially 10-month time frame, and that's a lot. And I was doing some really high mileage. So I think for me it's just like being a little bit kinder to myself about it and being like, this is okay. Like, you haven't lost all your fitness. Like, it's going to come back quickly. You just get back into a rhythm of training and it'll come back, and sort of telling myself that. But being like that type A personality that I am and sort of sometimes hard on myself, that's where I struggle. It's like, I'm the type of person that goes out and runs, and I'm need to get back into it. And there's a lot of like pressure there. So yeah, I guess like you could say I'm struggling a bit. So I'd love to know your thoughts. Like, anything, is this something you've experienced before, or?
It is. I think it's something that we all experience as athletes, especially if you're coming off of an A race. There's always, like this Ironman blues kind of thing that is out there that we all know about in the world of triathlon, where I believe it's really, you miss the structure and routine. You get to a point where you've trained so long for a particular effort that it's kind of become a habit of doing at least something. And then when you go post race, or I don't want to say drive, it's the need to do something kind of is a relaxed. So it's not as strong of a push to do a workout. Even though you feel like you want to do something, your body may be telling you, no, I'm not ready yet. And then emotionally and mentally, you're trying to decipher what your body is telling you versus the desires that you have. And the desire that you have is to maintain that momentum and to keep pushing and because I believe many people think that if I keep going, then I will get stronger and faster. And it's a hard lesson that I've had to learn, and that I still learn now. And I'm still in the process of learning because I still have not learned this lesson, that continuing to push doesn't necessarily mean that we continue to grow. It's not a linear relationship. So it's not like the more you do, the more you grow. There's ups and downs and there's switchbacks. We have to go back a little bit in order to go forward. It's a hard lesson to learn. And I'll be honest with you, I still haven't learned it. And I think a lot of it is, like I said, it's this you're almost grieving the process that you've gone through to train for this race. And just like grieving a loved one, you're grieving this habit and this routine that you've had. Whether it's a forced break or a voluntary one, I don't think that that changes the emotional process that you still have to go through post race. So I think that this is a very real thing that we all go through, and of the impression that if it's forced, it's even harder to go through because you feel like you've lost control. And us being A-type personalities and the way that we do things, we crave control, or at least the illusion of control. And when we feel like we've lost that control, it makes the whole situation even worse because now you start to spiral. And it's just like, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do that. And I can't do this. Rather than saying, I'm choosing not to do this, that statement of, I can't do this, makes it harder. And I think that that's something that we all struggle with. And I don't know if, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know if I'll ever learn that. And I don't know if it will ever get easier
Easier, yeah.
or ever get better.
Well,
Just
there's a
because
part
it's
of
just
that
the
is
way,
like what
it's
gets
the
us,
way we are.
yeah, it gets us back into it though. Like I feel like there's a part of
Yeah.
that, like if I were just like, oh, this is great, then I would maybe never, like you kind of need a little bit of that to be able to get back and do another race and kind of like get going again, to motivate yourself to kind of get back to that, because I do think there is a piece of it for me that I am mourning that process. Like that's a whole thing. I like the marathon, but I remember getting to the marathon and being like, oh, now I have to race. But like the
Oh,
part that I kind of love the most personally, this is probably why I keep doing it, right? Because if you don't love
yeah.
the process, you're not going to keep doing it. Is that all that training I put in and that routine and all like getting out and doing that work, that is actually something is like that grind or whatever. I just love it, that part of it. Not every day. I can't say I'm out there every day loving it, but that is the piece that I do enjoy. That's probably why I'm even considering doing another marathon. Because it's like I do like that. So when I'm done, and then the process is done, and I've done the race, then there's a tendency too for me to be like, okay, what's the next thing, so I can get right back into that. And in this situation, I forcibly sort of had to sort of be like, okay, I need to slow down because I know I can't keep doing these marathons and sign up for another one, maybe even in the fall, and be able to continue to make the progress that I need to make in the marathon and get the goal I want to get. Because you're right, it is not linear. Like you need these breaks and you need maybe to focus on something else for a little bit to maybe strengthen some of your weaknesses, things that I've identified. Okay, I really have like maybe not been focusing as much on strength training as I need to, or I need to focus more on speed for a little bit. And that's fine because then I can kind of focus on something new. But for the last year or so, I've had, okay, what's the next thing? It's like, okay, immediately after that Tucson race, I was like, okay, what am I going to do in the spring? And it kind of kept that process almost, there wasn't as much of a break, kind of kept the process going. But then, sort of because of my own, I need to take a step back, plus some things that were forced on me. So, I mean, it could be a surgery. It could be like some people get injured. This is another common thing that happens with like injury, where you're in the middle of focusing on something intently and then all of a sudden you're injured and you have forced to sort of take time off. It's hard, because you're mourning that, and you're trying to, in this case, like I was actually like forbidden to do any, he's like, you can maybe do elliptical training and walking. And I'm like, okay, so I did that, but that's not going to really keep, and the elliptical isn't something easy for me to access. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so that's not going to keep me momentum forwarding, my fitness, so, but it had to be done. Like I had to have the surgery. Honestly, this is probably the best time to do it because it was sort of in this sort of off season sort of situation for me. But it is hard to, now, especially getting back, I did a long run on Sunday and it was rough. I'm like, okay, I was doing these like 20 milers and now like of course it was hot. I don't want to make that my excuse, but it's something I'm still kind of getting used to the heat, but it's like 13 miles and I'm like fried. And this long run,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's just hard, right? You're like, but I'm like, it's okay. I have to keep reminding myself like that self-talk, like it's okay. You're gonna build back up and just just focus on, each day and trying to do what you need to do each day to start, like run, do some sort of running, get back into strength training, just build that routine back in day by day. And it'll come back, and the fitness will come back, and it'll be okay. But it is, I think, hard because you're yeah, you're like, and then you kind of worry a little bit, like, oh, will I get my fitness back? Is this it? Like,
Yep.
is it never gonna come back? Which is sort of maybe like not realistic or something, but it's hard, right? So I don't know.
It is. One of the things that I force myself to do and that I tell my athletes is when we're done with a race, depending on how long the race that you just did, but we don't look at any other races for a minimum of 1 week. So 7 days. There'll be no, hey, I'm looking at this race. What do you think? None of this stuff. So we shut down all looking at races. This is especially true if you had a race that you didn't feel like you performed up to the expectations that you had when you clicked the registration button. Now, those expectations that you formed then could be drastically different than the expectations that you had on race day. Very different. It could be just a function of how the training went during that time, because typically, and I'll speak from my point of view and how I look, is when I click that registration button, I have these grand plans in my head. It's just like, oh, the training is going to go awesome. I'm not going to have any setbacks. I'm going to have all greens and training peaks. So I'm not going to have any missed sessions. My body's going to absorb my fitness and I'm going to recover well. Sleep is going to be perfect. My diet's going to be awesome and I'm going to get a PR. Race day could be a completely different scenario where you had some flare-ups of things that took place during training. And so then you didn't get to train the way that you wanted to, but you trained how you could. Now, let's say that we get through the race and your result isn't what you envisioned before. Now, I find that now we're chasing that expectation. We're chasing that expected result rather than sitting down and processing the result that we had. And so now we're going to go out and we're going to search for another race that we feel like we can do because we want one more shot at realizing that expectation. I'm not saying that's what happened, for your race. I am saying because I've done this personally myself, where I've had races that did not perform the way that I wanted to, and I immediately went home the same day and started digging through race registrations on the web, searching for another race to validate the expectations that I had. And I find that forcing this suspension, for lack of a better word, is really a healthy way to approach it because it gives us a chance to unpack everything that we've just gone through, the struggles that we had during training, sitting back and critically evaluating how the race went, what went well, what didn't go as well as we had hoped. And then you can kind of spend that time and say, okay, for the next 7 days, I'm going to just I don't want to say relax, but because we don't relax well, I can tell, I don't relax well. I can tell you a story. It's 3 days after I finished my first Ironman, I was asking my coach for workouts. Only 3 days. And so I was just like, I'm ready, coach. Let's go. And that was the most painful workout I have ever experienced because he wanted to teach me a lesson. So he threw in some threshold intervals on the trainer. 3 days post Ironman.
Oh,
My
that's
first,
horrible.
and I was
Yeah.
just like, I hate this guy so much.
You
I
barely
hate
run
him
like
with
a
a
mile
passion.
3 days, like 3 or 4
And
days
I was
after
just
the
like,
marathon.
I was like,
I
what?
would do
And
that.
so, yeah, he taught me a valuable lesson that, yeah, there's a process that we have to go through. And I think it's one of the cool things about the sport of triathlon because we have a minimum of 3 disciplines that we can fall back on. And, I kind of feel for runners because that's your main focus. So if you're not running, you're sitting there thinking about why am I not running? And I know it. And so
Right.
as a triathlete, I can sit there and say, I'm not running, but I can bike or I can swim.
But
So
maybe
there
that's
is
just
a
really
little
like a
bit of,
problem because you don't allow
yeah,
yourself like because you're like, well, I
right. That,
probably don't feel good for
yep.
running, but I can get in the water and I can do a workout in the water or I can get on the bike, maybe not do threshold, but I can do some, and it's like you don't because you do need to give yourself time to recover. Like I think that's the thing is like I am not complaining like, oh, I wasn't able to jump right back into training. Like that's my that no, because I know I need some time. I think my frustration is just how long because it's been I think it was like that race it's
Mm,
6 weeks later and I'm finally like okay now I can get back into training like in a consistent way. I don't have anything. I feel good finally. Like I don't feel joint whatever was going on. I don't my surgeries behind me. Like it's 6 weeks though. Like that's a long time. Like, I was looking in the calendar and I'm like, yeah, last Sunday was 6 weeks. So I think, it's that. So I'm not, I think it's the thing is like it part of the process is the recovery and we should take at least a week off. Maybe after a
mm,
marathon or Ironman, even like up to 2 weeks might be okay to take off or do some really easy training or something movement of some sort, but no like maybe very structured workouts. And then to get back into it is pretty reasonable. I think it's when it takes for me, it's just that frustration of it taking longer than that.
mhm.
And the longer I move away from the marathon, the less like my fitness is kind of declining. And then I think it's just harder to build back into that momentum, right? So it's just sometimes finding that right like balance of like when do I start training and when is it appropriate to like look for that next race? Like when, yeah, I agree. It's for me like I kind of had like with my New York City marathon, I had that Tucson marathon in the back of my mind because that was going to be my plan B if New York City didn't go
Mm.
well. And then I decided because I felt pretty good after that marathon, I decided to sign up for it. Even though I did pretty well at the New York City Marathon, I didn't get my goal, but I didn't fail. It was like a great race. So it's just, sometimes that might be okay if you like feel you can do it. But I agree. I think most of the time to allow yourself that recovery, to allow yourself that time to like reflect on your race and really reflect on what went well and what didn't before you sign up for another race is very good. I think sometimes it's frustrating if then or if you have this race and you're just struggling for whatever reason to kind of get back even to find the motivation to train or you have some setbacks that are happening and you're going farther and farther and farther away from that A race and you're not sure what direction, you know what I mean? You're like, okay, it's just harder to get back. I think there's sometimes just finding that, it's just sometimes figuring that out can be, I think, challenging for some people, like not jumping in too soon. But when do you jump back in, and when do you start looking for races and figuring out what you're going to do next? Because I think that's important to find something eventually, maybe not right away, but I think it's important to find another race or another thing you want to work towards because that keeps you motivated. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just I think some people maybe are in that sort of struggle, like post race struggle or even like
Yeah.
injury struggle that they're struggling with to kind of come back and like how do you build that momentum back? Is it just like having the training plan, just building it slowly? Like maybe it's not jumping back into exactly what you were doing, but you're like, I'm gonna just go out every day and try to get a couple miles. I'm just gonna try to get a little workout in, even if it's small, because the consistency is the key. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that too, of the how does somebody go about kind of building back into to their training after taking some substantial time
Yeah.
easy or recovery or off or struggling, post race. Yeah.
I think a lot of the struggle is between the ears. I think that once you take some time off and then you kind of get back into it, the comparison trap starts, I think, from the very first step almost. And it's not a comparison trap in terms of like I'm comparing myself to others on social media or Strava or whatever it is. You're comparing yourself to a previous version of yourself. And so you're comparing, it's like, I'm going out for a zone 2 run today. What I feel should be a zone 2 based on what my zone 2 was back then when I was training. And then you try and hit that same kind of effort and you're like, oh, this feels harder. So now the spiral begins because now you're comparing yourself to where you were at some other point in time rather than where you are today. And that's just something that like I said, it happens between the ears, and it's a hard lesson to learn, and one that I've had to learn over and over and over again, as I get setbacks, so, oh, I got to deal with this issue and this injury, or, this is flared up. So now I got to take a little bit of a break. And then when I start back to it, I'm not where I was, and it's super frustrating. And what I'm trying to do is I'm pushing myself harder and harder and harder to get back to where I was, rather than being satisfied with where I am and progressing from here going forward. My eyes are always back there. And it's really hard
That is hard. Yeah. I think for
to
that
do.
5K, that was because last year I did the 5K and I was in good shape for a 5K because I've been kind of training for it. So I didn't have all these 6 weeks of setbacks and hadn't been training for a marathon, which isn't a speedy race, right? So I'm coming into it and I was 35 seconds slower on the same 5K this year.
Yeah.
And I arguably, if you had been looking at all the training I was doing for that marathon, you would think I would have been in better shape. And it's so hard not to be I actually am surprised, like, in a way, with how I did do in that 5K, considering like it was painful, but I did it. And it's like, oh, okay. Like, I'm actually okay. But like, when I sit there and I'm thinking about where I was, and then I'm more down on myself, then I'm like, oh, well, I'm not progressing where I want to be. I wanted to be breaking that time. Like, I was originally wanting to break that time from last year. And so I think that's the key, is try not to. And it's hard. It is between the ears, and you have to almost have that self-talk, because that is something that happens with me. I have these negative thoughts, like, oh, I'm not where I want to be. And then I have to kind of almost reframe it and be like, no, it's like, yeah, actually you're doing okay, because all those 6 weeks of struggle, and you still had a fairly good time. You met your goal for this race. The time I was kind of wanting to hit, I was met. So knowing that my fitness had declined. So it's like, don't think about it in terms of what you did last year, because that was a totally different situation. And so now moving forward, be where you're at now and start training again and building. And I do know that my fitness will probably come back quickly, but yeah, you're right. You don't want to like push it, like, oh, I'm going to set my times for my intervals where I think I should be or need to be, but trying to adjust things accordingly to where you are, and try not to compare that to where, those other workouts you did when you were in really great shape, because you'll probably get back there. But I think I have to tell myself that quite often, like that self-talk of like, almost like, I know this sounds crazy, but it's like that negative voice. And then you have to kind of counteract it with like a positive, like, no, that's wrong. Like, this is where I'm at. And that way you don't let that sort of negative self-talk sort of bring you down. And then I think that sometimes can be because you're like, start to think, oh, well, what's the point? Like, I'm not, going to go out, or I'm not going to do it. Like, maybe you start to sort of, that's not negative self-talk starts to creep in more, and maybe it's no longer fun for you, or you're not enjoying it because you're so negative about it, or you're comparing yourself to where you used to be. And yeah, so I do think that's a good point, is like trying to not do that, even though we all do it. I think it's just, you have to keep reframing it in your mind, like, no, like, it's okay, almost like, telling yourself, or if you have a coach, it's nice, because that coach can help too, and that telling you, helping you work through that, and keep continuing to sort of help you, like, okay, this is fine, this is where you are, where you're going to get better. And that person can kind of help coach you through some of those struggles as well, which I think could be really beneficial.
So there's two things that I want to bring up. The first one is going to be, if you are being actively coached by someone, that is the relationship that you want to lean on in these particular situations. That's what your coach is there for. Coaching is more than just training plans. It is a relationship between two people working together to accomplish a goal. The coach's goal is to prepare you as best as they can, given your availability, given the scenario and the situation, and to encourage you and support you any way that they can and prepare you. Their job is not to keep you injury free. Their job is not to motivate you. Their job is not to force you to work out. Those are on you. Injuries happen regardless of how conservative and how safe you are. It's just part of the game. It's our job to try and mitigate the risk, but we can only do but so much. However, there is a large segment of the population that is not actively coached by someone. So who do they rely on for this support? If you're kind of struggling with the internal conversation, sometimes it's good to find somebody that you can trust and that you value their opinions, and preferably somebody who's been in the sport longer than you have. The one thing that I do not recommend is that you go out to social media, you go into these groups, whatever the group is. It could be, sports specific or whatever, and search for your motivation there. Because a lot of it is going to be empty motivation. These are people that you don't know. They don't know you. They don't know the struggles that you have, the issues that you deal with. They don't know what your training looks like and what it has been and what you're kind of going through. They're going to give you unemotional supports like, you can do it. Don't worry about it. It will get better. But my opinion is that you should really kind of be choosy on who you rely on for that type of support and encouragement.
Can I just put in here so
Absolutely.
for me,
Go
I mean,
for it.
I feel like Justin, help sometimes. I'll discuss my struggles and you'll offer good insights, but I do have like what I call my running buddy, my running mentor. And for me, it's like his name is Bob, but he is a little older than me, but he's a phenomenal runner. He's trying to get like a sub 3 hour marathon. And he's about 20 years older than me. And we do a lot of our long runs together. And he's my mentor. So sometimes, especially when you're doing a long run, like a really long run, you have a lot of time to talk. So, a lot of times I'll bring up some of my struggles with, especially like even last week when I was struggling in the long run, and just having that encouragement of like, it's okay, like you're gonna get but like he knows me, and he's offering me that encouragement, and it does help. And I think he's been there because he's been a runner for many, many years more than me. I mean, he started when he was like in his teens, and now he's 63 or something. So it's like amazing. And he's there. He's been there. He's been where I've been. He's been through injury. So finding somebody like that is, through a running group or a coach or something. But I do encourage that, to have that sort of somebody there to maybe even be able to help you from overdoing it when you are in the middle of training too. Just someone there with some ability to give you that insight is so helpful, because on the flip side, sometimes you're struggling to get consistent again or to get back into it, and sometimes you're in the middle of it and you might be overdoing it, and to have somebody there to sort of help you in those times and realize, because we're usually our own worst enemies, right, when it comes to some of this.
Right.
So it's like I do encourage it, and it's probably it really does help to have somebody that's also in the sport. I mean, you might have family that's very loving and supportive, but it's helpful to have, they don't understand. So it's like helpful to have somebody that maybe has some experience in the sport and can help out in that way.
There's the donkey.
It's not the donkey. It's my
That's not peanut
guinea
butter.
heads. I'm gonna go close my we have several
It's all
animals. So
good.
I'm gonna go close my window, but you keep going.
So the second point that I wanted to bring up is, you asked the question, when should, somebody jump back in to training post race? And I have to say that it depends. Unfortunately, the answer is it depends. And the reason that I say that is that there are some people that respond to that hard love. It's like, all right, put your shoes on, let's go. There are some people that respond to that. Then there are some people that do not respond to that type of approach. I say, in general, you get back into training when you feel like you want to train, not where you feel like where you're telling yourself, I have to get back to this. Because to me, that feels a little bit more forced. And if it's forced, there must be something that is going on that is keeping you from getting back to it, whether that's the situation, your stress levels outside of training, life stress, or what have you, injuries, whatever the situation may be, there is some kind of stumbling block that is there. If you're telling yourself, I have to get back to this, pay attention to that. I like to say, when you tell me, hey coach, I'm ready to get back to this, I want to do this, then I know that we're in. And so I feel like, after you come back from a race and you're just like, okay, I genuinely want to do this, I think that that's a good time to do something. The question becomes, well, how? How do I get back into it? And I say that again, it depends on the sport. It depends on, how your race went, how you were feeling, how the recovery process has been. I like to, as a triathlon coach, I like to rely on kind of like the non-impact kind of stuff. So, I say, okay, we're post race. This means, hey, let's jump on the bike and let's do some relatively easy stuff. Not everything has to be easy. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. Let's say that it's different. So something that I've done personally, in my own training, post triathlon races, I'm done. I took the pedals off of my road bike and I put the pedals on my gravel bike. And I've been on my gravel bike ever since. I'm still gaining fitness. It's a different style of cycling and I'm loving it and I'm enjoying it. There's also a different approach where for the pool training that I've been doing, I've been trying to build endurance just to get through the distances that I needed to cover with the issues that I've had with my shoulders. Now I say, okay, now I don't have to worry about making distance. Now I can kind of do other stuff that might be a little bit not necessarily more enjoyable, but it's something that I know that I need to do, something that I sacrificed then in order to do something else. So, I abandoned my speed work in the pool because I felt like I needed to be able to cover the distance and make sure that I had the muscular endurance to swim the distance that I needed to. Especially swimming in a wetsuit, I needed to build the strength that I needed to swim in a wetsuit, which is harder than not swimming in a wetsuit. And so now that my races are done, I was like, okay, well now I can throw in some hard efforts, and I'm keeping them short, little 25s. If I say, I'm giving myself hundreds and I throw in a rotating hard 25 in there just to kind of break things up and start to introduce a little bit more speed work in there. And then I have a technical swim that I do later in the week where I'm working on fundamentals. I'm doing some drills and things, to work on getting a more efficient catch in the water. The point that I'm trying to make here is now is a really great time to not do what you feel like you have to do, but do stuff that you feel like you get to do. And I think it's a mindset switch that has to be flipped. And it could be where, let's say that you're training for an Ironman or you're training for a marathon, so you have to abandon a little bit of your strength training, not all of it, but there are some things that you have to sacrifice in order to get the run volume in or the triathlon volume that you need for race day. Now is your chance to say, okay, I sacrificed that. Now I can kind of come back to it and I'm going to give myself 30 days and I'm going to give myself a chance to do this other activity that I had to sacrifice during my training period. And now I'm going to bury myself into this. And I believe that the variety and the change of focus is filling. It's like it fills the cup a little bit. And so by the time that you reach the end of the 30 days, you haven't really focused on like your primary sport. You've been doing some of these ancillary things, or some of these other different aspects to it. And I think there's a renewed energy at the end of that 30-day time period where it's just like, man, I feel great. I got to do something different. And now I'm ready to get back to my core set of training. I think that I don't want to call them breaks because we're not stopping. We're just getting to refocus. Refocus is a great way to describe that. And so, as for you as a runner, you could say you have some availability in terms of being able to gain access to an elliptical or things like that.
I have a rowing machine. I have weight training.
Yeah, but you have other stuff, that
Mm-hmm.
you can do. You've got the weight stuff, you got the rowing machine, you have hiking that you can do. I mean,
Yeah, but I mean, I think
one of the
even
things that
for
I,
me, it's not, it's like within the running, and this is something now, and I
mm,
know this about myself is like speed work. Like I do actually really enjoy doing, I signed up for like a mile race in the beginning of August. And so I'm going to do this 1 mile race. It's not like my forte by any means. I'm not a speed athlete, but like this is now I'm going to switch a lot of my training. So I won't be doing the volume that I was doing, which gives me a little break from all of that like volume and time that I have to spend training for a marathon. And I can focus on short, fast sprints and, track workouts that I didn't necessarily get to do as much in the marathon. And yeah, you're right, like getting back into strength. So, but then you might think, well, how is that going to prepare you for a marathon that you want to do. And I think it prepares you very well because that speed, if you can be a faster at the mile and stronger if you have more muscle mass, that, you don't obviously be building like a ton of muscle mass if you're going to be doing a marathon, but you do want to be strong and injury free. And I think those are like those building blocks that I want to that you can set, especially the speed piece, maybe doing more plyometrics, like things that I maybe didn't have as much time for during marathon training. Once I can do that, and then once I get back into marathon training, which will probably won't be until like spring, I will have this like really strong foundation that I can build upon. And I think very seriously that'll make me a much better marathon, like it'll make my marathon even better. So sometimes it's, you want to jump right back into it, but I think that is to your detriment sometimes if you don't focus on these other aspects like strength or just like doing other things that fill your cup so that you don't, because you can burn out, right? Like it's very real to burn out of like to the point where you're like, I'm sick, I hate the training, like this sucks. You don't want that. So I think you're absolutely right. Taking that time and refocusing and finding like a new goal that isn't, maybe it's not an Ironman and maybe you're doing a sprint triathlon and you're trying to see like how fast you can get in that for a bit. And then you're working on the speed piece. This is just for triathlon. And then, you can go back to the Ironman. And I think honestly, it can help you become a better Ironman athlete, and that's same with similar to a marathon because you've sort of worked a little bit on more of that speed and taken a little bit of time to do that or focused on maybe your weakness in the triathlon. Maybe that's for me swimming. So it'd be something that maybe if I were to do triathlon, I would maybe use this time to focus on that. So I think that's absolutely great advice. And something I'm trying to do now that I'm finally feeling good. And it does. And then another good thing about that is then I don't have a lot to compare it to other than like the last time I did a mile race. And I don't, it's not like I have a robust amount of experience in that. So it gives me something new to focus on in which I don't have a lot of comparisons to make. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, well, I did this like a couple years ago and this was my time, but it's not like a race I do often. So it kind of gives me a goal without having, like I'm doing the speed without really having a lot of like comparisons to make to like training in the past, so it's nice. It's freeing in that way. So that's kind of where
Yeah.
I'm at.
One of the things that I did too, when I had my rotator cuff surgery, I was really like, kind of like sitting on the couch thinking, like, what am I going to do? I can't swim, I can't ride, and I can't run. I can't do any of the stuff that I've been doing before that, over the past, at that point in time, it was a little under 10 years, but it had become part of who I am. I feel as a person. It was almost kind of like it was part of my DNA. And so I really kind of struggled, thinking, well, what's next? What is next for me? This has kind of been taken away. I don't know if this is going to be permanent or what. And so my wife was sitting on the couch one night and she was scrolling through social media and she's like, this might be pretty cool. And she found it was an organization called Mammoth March. And what they do is it really started during COVID. And these are 20-mile hikes that take place in various like state parks all over the country. And you typically have about 8 hours to complete this 20-mile hike. And I said, well, I've never done that before and let's give that a shot. And honestly, I'm so incredibly grateful to her for finding it and suggesting it because it really kind of opened the door. I was hiking in the state parks with my arm in a sling after, as my shoulder healed, because it was all that I could do. It was a hard, bitter pill to swallow, going from, a multiple Ironman, full Ironman, half Ironman, 10 years of this stuff to only being able to walk. And it's humbling, but it's something that I needed. I needed that. And I spent, probably a year doing this because then I had complications from shoulder surgery and then I had like frozen shoulder where I couldn't lift my arm up above my head. So obviously I couldn't swim. I couldn't do anything. And then I had some chronic tendonitis cleared out of my other elbow. And so I had both arms that were kind of like jacked. And so this one, my rotator cuff healed enough to where I could function. And then I had another surgery to clear out my elbow. And so I had another cast on, but there I was hiking through the trails. And so, I finished 2 mammoth marches, beat my expectations and beat my goals significantly. It was humbling, but it's something that I needed. And the reason that I bring this up today is because after that experience, my drive to get back to long course triathlon racing was so incredibly great that I was ready to do whatever it is that I needed to do to get back in shape to do long course racing. And I knew, hey, I got to spend a lot of time in the weight room. I've gotten incredibly weak. And, without that part, my body isn't going to hold up to the swim, bike, and run stuff that I need to do. So I had to prioritize my training. And I can honestly say that swallowing that humble pill, to go out and do those types of events was life changing, and it reignites a fire. So I don't want people to feel discouraged because they've reached some roadblock in their endurance athlete journey to where they question their ability to gain fitness back, or, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? Because there's always something that you can do.
It'd be
And
like an opportunity for,
you never
yeah.
know what that's going to
Yeah, it
turn
might be an
into.
opportunity to try something different that,
Absolutely.
gives you either, because maybe you have an injury, like just ability to continue doing something and not, then that you can work towards because you do like that's part of it. And it also can maybe give you an opportunity to strengthen something like a weakness that maybe you haven't had a chance to work on. It's just an opportunity, I think, to, or to even really reflect a little bit on your relationship with the sport a little, like, why
Yep.
am I doing this? Like, why do, even having a little bit of that, like, what is my motivation for that? Why do I love, like, why do I love this so much? Why do I keep pushing myself so hard? And that's not to say that means that, that's a negative thing, but I think really having those moments where you can kind of reflect and, it's always a pendulum. I think for me, it's like, when I'm marathon training, I'm spending so much time doing that. I'm kind of tired a lot. I'm so focused on that, and I sometimes it does need to kind of shift the other way. And I've had a lot of opportunity now over the past 6 weeks. So kind of looking at it this way, like positively, to spend a lot of time with my son. Because he's going to kindergarten next year. This coming year, and he's going to be in school a lot, and so trying to sort of flip it is like now I'm not training as much. I've had a lot more time to spend with him and do things with him, and that's important. So, I think there's sometimes positives that come out of it. And just because you're not where you want to be, maybe that's okay in the moment because there's other things that are happening and maybe you're growing in some other way or you're finding something different to try that, helps you. Because when you do come back to it, like you said, then you're hungry. Maybe like when you come back to the
Yeah.
Ironman stuff, you're like
Yes.
hungry to do it. Whereas if you'd been doing it that whole time, there's much more of a risk that maybe you would kind of burn out. And so it gives you that opportunity to
Mhm.
sort of have that break so that you can come back and be like ready to put in the work again. So I think this is a really beautiful conversation. I know we're almost at the hour and I do have to head out like pretty soon, but I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I feel like we've come from that. I think the biggest thing is like, yeah, it's okay. Like, from what I get out of it is like, yes, this is okay. Like, it's not the end of the world that I have had these struggles post marathon. And maybe it's actually a time for me to focus on other things that are important in my life. And maybe it gives me an opportunity to focus on something different for a while before I attack the marathon again. And I'll probably be better
Yeah.
for it. So that was, yeah, it's helpful to, always helpful to talk it through and get your insights. And I hope it helps other people as well. I'm sure we're not the only ones that have had these struggles. And yeah, so thanks, Coach Justin. Anything else, you want to make sure we just touch on real quick or add? Or do you think we
No, the one thing that I will say is that one great place for people to go to is we've created the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group. It is a private group that is on Facebook. All you need to do is just search the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast group and answer one question. We'll let you in. This is a great place that you can come to, whether it be for motivation or inspiration. If you need that external motivation and inspiration, this is a place that you can come to. This is a place where you can reach out to us, both Katie and I, if you have questions or if there's a topic that you would love for us to talk about, if we have any insight on it. Post a message within this group is a
yeah,
is a nice safe
please do
place
it.
for you to go.
And also
So please
we do
join.
want you to, if you do are enjoying the podcast. If you could leave a review for us on wherever you listen, so whether it's like Spotify, I listen on, I don't know how easy it is on Audible, but wherever you listen, please try to leave a review, because we're not, asking for money. We don't have any sponsors. We really want to try not to, because we want to make it authentic. So we really kind of rely on those reviews to kind of get the word out. So if you are enjoying it, if you like the content we're providing, like, please leave a review. Like, obviously we prefer positive, but any kind of review helps us grow. So that would be fantastic as well. So just something to think about if you have a minute. We would really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll be back. I think we got next week we'll be coming out with our protein. We're going to talk a little bit more about protein. I know that's a hot topic. There's a lot out there, but I'm hoping to kind of cut through some of the noise as it relates to athletes, endurance athletes, some things to kind of consider with protein. And so hopefully it'll help kind of cut through some of the noise or the ridiculous things. So sometimes we're hearing on social media, because we'll come in at it with more of a research-based perspective with my experience working with athletes as well. So hopefully you could look forward to that. And yeah, this has been a great discussion. I'm glad we had a chance to chat today. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us in our first episode of the Coach's Corner. Again, we thank you, and we appreciate the time that you spend supporting us and listening and downloads. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all again next time. Bye. Bye-bye. Listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube. Feel free to leave us up to a 5-star review on iTunes and Spotify, because leaving a review really helps others like you find us. Visit the podcast website for other episodes of the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast at enduranceathletejourney.buzzsprout.com. Have questions or comments about the podcast? Send Coach Justin and Katie an email at theenduranceathletejourney@gmail.com. For all things coaching, visit Coach Katie at fuel2run.com and Coach Justin at tabularasaracing.com. Again, thank you for listening to the Endurance Athlete Journey podcast, and remember to find joy in the journey.